Somewhere along the cold coastline of 9th century Scandinavia, a name began to spread from village to village, carried by traders, warriors, and poets. The name was Ragnar. To some, he was a king. To others, he was a raider. To all who heard the stories, he was something more than an ordinary man. This is the Saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, a legend so powerful that centuries later, people still cannot agree where the man ends and the myth begins. The story begins in a world shaped by the sea. Scandinavia in this era was not one unified kingdom. It was a patchwork of small territories, ruled by chieftains and petty kings who fought as often as they cooperated. Farming was hard. The soil was thin, the winters long, and the growing season short. For many families, the ocean offered something the land could not: opportunity. A strong ship and a skilled crew could reach distant shores rich with silver, grain, and treasure. This is why, in this period, raiding was not seen as pure villainy. It was seen as a path to wealth, status, and honor. A man who returned from a raid with riches could feed his family, expand his farm, and rise in the eyes of his community. Into this world was born Ragnar, son of a minor ruler. According to legend, his early life was shaped by loss and ambition. His father died young, leaving Ragnar to prove himself without the guarantee of noble protection. In many Norse sagas, this kind of beginning was common. Status was rarely guaranteed by birth alone. A man had to earn respect through deeds, especially through bravery in battle. The most famous story of Ragnar's youth explains where his name came from. As the tale goes, a local ruler promised his daughter, a woman named Thora, in marriage to whoever could slay a monstrous serpent guarding her chamber. Ragnar approached the challenge wearing strange trousers, boiled in tar and rolled in sand, so thick that the serpent's fangs could not pierce them. He killed the beast and won Thora's hand. From that day, he was known as Ragnar Lothbrok, meaning Ragnar Hairy Breeches. Whether or not this exact event occurred, it reveals something important about how the Norse told stories about their heroes. A hero was not only measured by strength, but by cleverness. Ragnar did not simply overpower the serpent, he outsmarted it. This blend of courage and cunning becomes the defining trait of his entire legend. After Thora's death, grief pushed Ragnar back toward the sea. It was here that his reputation as a raider truly began to grow. Historical sources from this period describe increasingly bold Viking attacks across Frankish and English territories, and many later legends attribute the most daring of these raids to Ragnar himself. One of the most remarkable stories associated with him is the Siege of Paris. In the 9th century, Paris was a wealthy and heavily fortified city, protected by the Seine River and strong walls. A direct assault would have been costly and difficult. Instead, according to legend, Ragnar's forces used clever tactics, exploiting the terrain and the element of surprise to pressure the city into paying a massive ransom of silver in exchange for peace. Whether Ragnar personally led this attack is debated among historians, but the story became attached to his name because it captured exactly the kind of Viking leader people imagined him to be: bold, strategic, and terrifyingly effective. To understand why these stories mattered so much to Norse audiences, it helps to understand their values. In Viking Age society, reputation was almost a form of currency. A leader was expected to bring wealth and glory to his people. Failure could mean losing followers, land, or even his life. Success meant songs would be sung about him for generations. Ragnar's raids, real or exaggerated, transformed him from a minor chieftain into a symbol of Viking ambition itself. As his fame grew, so did his family. Ragnar is said to have fathered several sons who would each become legendary figures in their own right. Bjorn Ironside, Ivar the Boneless, Ubba, and Halfdan among them. In many versions of the saga, these sons are just as important as Ragnar himself because their actions eventually shape the second half of the story. Ragnar's downfall begins, as it often does in legend, with pride. After years of successful raiding, he is said to have grown restless, seeking a target greater than any before. He set his sights on England, ruled at the time by King Aella of Northumbria. Unlike earlier raids, this expedition went catastrophically wrong. Ragnar's forces were defeated, and he was captured. According to the most famous version of the legend, King Ella ordered a brutal execution. Ragnar was thrown into a pit filled with venomous snakes. As the poison overtook him, he is said to have spoken his final words, a defiant declaration that has echoed through storytelling ever since, how the little pigs would grunt if they knew the suffering of the old boar. This was not a simple statement of pain. It was a warning. Ragnar was reminding his enemies that he had powerful sons and that his death would not go unanswered. This moment matters deeply in the context of Norse honor culture. In Viking society, dying with courage was often considered more important than avoiding death altogether. A calm, defiant death could inspire loyalty and vengeance from one's family and followers. Ragnar's final words were not just an act of personal bravery, they were a call to action for the next generation. And his sons answered that call. According to the sagas, Ragnar's death led to the formation of what became known as the Great Heathen Army, a massive coalition of Norse warriors who invaded England not simply to raid, but to conquer. Ivar the Boneless, despite physical limitations described in the legends, became known as a brilliant and ruthless military strategist. Alongside his brothers, he led campaigns that toppled several English kingdoms, eventually capturing and executing King Alla in a manner said to mirror the suffering their father endured. This part of the saga reveals another crucial aspect of Viking Age culture, the deep importance of family loyalty and vengeance. In a world without centralized law enforcement as we understand it today, family honor often had to be defended by the family itself. A wrong committed against one member could bring consequences for generations. Ragnar's sons were not only expanding Norse territory, they were fulfilling a sacred obligation to their father's memory. Historians today face a genuine challenge when studying Ragnar. Very few contemporary records confirm his existence as a single historical individual. Some scholars believe Ragnar may be a composite figure, blending the deeds of multiple real Viking leaders into one legendary character. Others argue that a real chieftain may have existed, whose story was later exaggerated and merged with older mythological elements. What remains clear is that regardless of whether he was one man or many, the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok captures something historically real: the ambition, brutality, and complexity of the Viking Age itself. This uncertainty does not diminish the story. If anything, it strengthens its power. Ragnar's saga survived not because every detail is historically verified, but because it captures universal themes: ambition and consequence, glory and downfall, a father's legacy carried forward by his children. These are themes that resonate across cultures and centuries, which is exactly why the story continued to be told long after the Viking Age ended. By the time medieval writers began recording these sagas in places like Iceland, centuries after the events they describe, Ragnar had already become larger than life. Poets and storytellers shaped his tale not merely as historical record, but as cultural memory, a way of preserving Norse identity, values, and pride during a time when their world was changing rapidly due to the spread of Christianity and the decline of traditional Viking raiding. Even today, the appeal of Ragnar's story has not faded. Modern television series, novels, and popular retellings continue to draw audiences into his world. Why does this particular legend endure so powerfully? Perhaps because Ragnar represents something deeply human: the desire to rise from obscurity, to leave a legacy greater than oneself, and to be remembered not for how one lived quietly, but for how one lived boldly. In the end, whether Ragnar Lothbrok was one man, several men combined into one legend, or a figure shaped almost entirely by myth, his story reveals the soul of an era. It shows a world where the sea was both danger and opportunity, where reputation could outlive the body, and where a single defiant death could ignite the actions of an entire generation. The old boar fell into the pit that day in Northumbria. But true to his final warning, his sons did grunt, and the world remembered.
Please give a like and a follow if you think I deserve it. It really means a lot for small creators like myself.